Why are we so scared of sincerity? In a landscape where every tweet, meme, and TikTok is laced with winking, cynical detachment, sincerity feels like the last taboo. It's a thing we recoil from because too much earnestness might embarrass us in front of the cool kids. Irony is everywhere, so pervasive that it's no longer just a rhetorical device or comedic tool. It's the default mode of being. Irony is now a suit of armor, a protective layer that shields us from vulnerability, but that also locks out genuine connection. If sincerity was once considered a virtue, now it's kind of a social death sentence, because who wants to be caught caring too much, right? So why irony and why now? What if this ironic detachment that we've all been marinating in is a symptom of something deeper and darker, and more troubling, brewing within the collective unconscious? What if, as Carl Jung might suggest, it's the devil rearing his ugly head? Hi, I'm Angie, your self-proclaimed high priestess of the apocalypse, here to remind you that the devil might wear Prada, but sincerity is the real power suit. And it also might end up being the exorcism we're really desperate for. Chapter 1. Irony and Insincerity as the Shadow, Denying the Devil Within. Jung's idea of the shadow is all about what we hide, deny, and repress. The shadow contains those parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. The ugliness, the deceit, the cruelty, the hypocrisy, the inferiority, and the insecurities. It's not just a personal thing. Societies, cultures, and entire generations have shadows too. So when we talk about irony poisoning our culture, we're really talking about the shadow, what we can't face in ourselves, seeping out into the collective psyche in an unconventional manner. To Jung, the shadow is like a locked attic room, filled with things that you'd rather not see. Every time you turn your back on it though, it leaks into your life in ways you don't even notice. Irony, and particularly its ugly sibling, Insincerity, might just be the prime ways that our modern selves deflect the uncomfortable truths we don't want to face, both about ourselves and the world around us. Irony, in this sense, becomes a kind of emotional and intellectual dodgeball game. I'll never let you hit me where I live because I'm too busy making sure you can't tell where that is. It's the classic mask that Jung talks about, what he calls the persona, something that shields us from the painful vulnerability of cringy authenticity. We don't say what we mean because deep down we're terrified of being seen and of being exposed, especially in a social media environment where you're one post away from becoming a joke, a meme, or the subject of eternal ridicule. Jung says, quote, "How can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side also if I am to be whole." There's the twist. Ironic detachment by separating our public persona from our private feelings drives us further from wholeness. The way irony functions in our culture now is not to liberate us. It's making us more fragmented, incomplete. We hide our real selves in the dark, where the devil can easily find us. Chapter 2. The Trickster Archetype, Irony's Devilish Origins. Enter the Trickster. If you want to know where irony gets its cultural mojo, look no further than the archetypal trickster, the figure who thrives on paradox, deception, and subversion. Tricksters have been showing up in myths forever. Loki in Norse mythology, Hermes in Greek mythology, and Eshu in the Yoruba pantheon. They're the ones who cross boundaries, defy convention, and generally cause mischief wherever they go. The trickster is always ironic, always making fun of what other people take seriously. They laugh at authority, mock social norms, and reveal the absurdity of the world by flipping it on its head. Here's an example of a modern trickster figure, Donald Glover's urn in Atlanta. He embodies the archetype through his ability to navigate social situations with an ironic detachment that reflects the chaotic nature of contemporary American life. Urn's knack for code switching, slipping seamlessly between different cultural spheres, allows him to exist in a state of clever ambiguity, sidestepping the cultural landmines that threaten to engulf those around him. In a society where tribalism and conflict are rampant, his ironic distance is not just a survival tactic, it's a way to expose and exploit the cultural blind spots of others around him. And this trickster power benefits him greatly throughout the story. But then we pivot to Ricky Fitz from American Beauty 1999. A character who embodies the dark side of the trickster archetype in a more profound, philosophical way. I've loved this film since I was a teenager, not just for its exploration of suburban malaise, but also for Ricky himself, the unconventional neighbor whose oddities I found magnetic. He was the epitome of my adolescent animus projection. Enigmatic, mysterious. It was impossible not to find him intriguing, especially against the backdrop of a rigid, conformist suburb. As I grew older, my crush on Ricky transformed from an innocent infatuation into a recognition of the deeper darkness within him. His fascination with the grotesque, filming dead birds and reveling in the beauty of decay, serves as a lens through which he challenges the hollow facades maintained by the characters around him. Ricky's trickster nature manifests through his ability to expose the superficiality of suburban life, forcing others to confront uncomfortable truths they prefer to ignore. In this way, he embodies the darker aspects of the trickster archetype, revealing that irony can be both enlightening and malevolent. Ricky's detached yet penetrating worldview destabilizes the lives of those around him, particularly Lester Burnham, who finds himself drawn into Ricky's orbit. While Ern from Atlanta uses irony to navigate a turbulent world and stay one step ahead, Ricky's irony acts as a catalyst for the existential crisis of others. Instead of offering escape, he leads others deeper into their own personal abysses, guiding them to confront desires and darkness that they've repressed. This is where irony bifurcates. It can illuminate or it can drag you down. Ricky's trickster energy exposes the emptiness of the lives of those around him, revealing the stark contrast between the idealized suburban facade and the decaying truths lurking beneath. His ability to capture beauty in darkness forces characters like Lester to confront their own mortality and the absurdity of their existence. While I once viewed Ricky's influence on Lester as a poetic rebellion against conformity, I now recognize it as a tragic descent into chaos, an ironic twist that leaves you questioning whether liberation or destruction is the ultimate goal. Ultimately, the trickster archetype reminds us of irony's devilish origins. It can be employed constructively, as seen in Earl's ability to navigate a fractured society with cleverness and grace. Yet, it can also lead to darker places, illustrated by Ricky, whose insights into beauty and decay invite others into their own personal abyss. The duality of the trickster then serves as a reflection of the chaotic human psyche. Irony can be a shield against absurdity, like with Earn, or it can plunge us into a void, revealing the uncomfortable truths that lie beneath our carefully constructed lives. Chapter 3: The Devil is in the Division, Irony and the Splitting of the Self. Jung often spoke of the devil as a symbol of division, drawing from the word's etymology, diablos, which means the one who divides. In religious texts, the devil is the great divider. He splits heaven from hell, light from dark, good from evil. But in psychological terms, the devil also represents the inner split, the schism within ourselves between what we show the world and what we hide from it. Irony in its most insidious form is the devil's tool. When we deploy irony insincerely, we divide what is said from what is meant, and in doing so, we sever ourselves from genuine expression. Look at social media culture. The rise of platforms like X and Instagram are temples of performative irony. Consider how often the default reaction to anything sincere or heartfelt online is to mock, troll, or dismiss it as cringe. We've created entire online subcultures where nihilistic irony-soaked detachment from meaning is the baseline emotional response. Because we can't handle sincerity without discomfort? When someone breaks the rules of irony and actually means something, it's awkward. Like someone just farted loudly in a quiet room. Nobody wants to be that earnest person who posts long, heartfelt posts about a personal struggle, and then the comments are flooded with emoji-laden quips, or worse, silence. We've collectively trained ourselves to shy away from real emotion in favor of layers upon layers of distancing irony. Irony, in this sense, is a devilish trick. It divides us from ourselves, creating a split between our persona, the face we show the world, and our inner self. Jung described this split as a gnawing tension between the conscious and the unconscious personality. He warned that if we don't confront the devil within, we risk being consumed by it. Chapter 4: Cultural Examples, Comedy, Memes, and Existential Dread. For more proof of irony poisoning, let's look at where irony flourishes the most. In comedy, particularly in the digital age. We all traffic in political satire, using humor to deflate the absurdity of modern life. There's a fine line between irony that serves as social critique and irony that slips into nihilism. Nowadays, the trickster archetype's duality has taken a decidedly darker turn. Once a figure of subversion, humor, and community building, the trickster now often serves as a vehicle for cynicism and insincerity, leading to a culture saturated with irony that distorts the original intent of humor and critique. Take Ethan Klein, for instance, initially celebrated for his candidness in the early days of H3. Klein has devolved into a figure who embraces a brand of irony that borders on self-parody. The sharp wit now often serves as a mask for performative outrage and insincerity, rendering genuine connection with his audience impossible. This is why one so often gets the sense that big YouTubers hate their audience. As he navigates the murky waters of internet drama, Klein exemplifies how the trickster's role has shifted from illuminating truths to perpetuating an echo chamber of cynical commentary that ultimately alienates rather than unites. This phenomenon is not isolated to individual figures, but is also reflected in broader trends of internet culture, such as the rise of cancel culture and the cynical nature of internet drama. Memes, which once served as clever commentary or humorous takes on daily life, have now become vehicles for outrage and polarization. This shift in the comedy landscape signals a troubling trend. The trickster, once a symbol of creativity and connection, now often embodies the devilish aspect of cynicism and insincerity. The consequences of this transformation are profound, and it's manifesting in a pervasive sense of existential dread in our collective psyche. In embracing this darker side of the trickster, we find ourselves demoralized, an outcome reminiscent of the devil's influence, which thrives on confusion and disillusionment. What if there was a story that offered a chilling glimpse into how demons scheme to sabotage our lives? C.S. Lewis provides just that in the Screwtape Letters, a novel where a senior demon, Screwtape, gives advice to his novice nephew, Wormwood, on how to lead humans astray. In Jungian terms, the devil embodies the part of our psyche that seeks to undermine our pursuit of meaning and authenticity. One particularly telling piece of advice involves the manipulation of irony and cynicism, wherein Screwtape encourages Wormwood to cultivate a detached attitude in his human subject, thereby fostering a sense of insincerity that stifles connection and understanding. By distorting irony into a weapon of ridicule, the devil effectively stamps out the very emotions and experiences that could bring the individual closer to meaning, love, hope, and vulnerability. For instance, when Screwtape suggests that the human should treat serious matters as a joke, he is illustrating how irony can become a barrier to life, creating a veil that hides the beauty of existence beneath layers of mockery. This insidious tactic erodes the human spirit and leads individuals further away from profound experiences, deeper insights, and relationships, which are essential for a life with meaning. Thus, the devil's possession manifests as an ironic detachment that cultivates despair, leaving the individual adrift in a world stripped of authenticity and purpose. When the essence of humor shifts from fostering community to perpetuating division and cynicism, we risk losing sight of the original intent behind the trickster's playful subversion. The result is a culture where irony becomes a shield that separates us from the vulnerabilities and complexities of the human experience. The tragic revelation is, irony, for all its deflection, isn't protecting any of us from loneliness, from sadness, or from existential dread. It's just postponing the inevitable confrontation with the shadow. Chapter 5: Moral Responsibility and the Journey Towards Wholeness. Jung would suggest that the constant use of irony and insincerity isn't just annoying, it's morally problematic. It encourages self-deception. In Jung's framework, the goal of life isn't to split yourself into neat little compartments, where one half is ironically detached, while the other half is scared and vulnerable. The goal is to integrate these aspects of yourself and strive towards wholeness. This process is what Jung calls individuation, and it requires confronting the shadow and not deflecting it with endless layers of irony and detachment. Irony, when used responsibly, can still serve individuation. It can expose hypocrisies and challenge stale systems, acting as a tool of self-awareness. But irony, when wielded cynically, becomes a barrier to growth. As Jung said, quote, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of the whole outlook on life. That I feed the hungry, that I forgive an insult, that I love my enemy. These are undoubtedly great virtues, but what I do unto the least of my brethren, that I do unto myself." End quote. In other words, sincerity, integrity, and wholeness aren't just acts of kindness towards others, they are acts of kindness towards yourself. The more you hide behind irony and insincerity, the more you alienate yourself from the parts of you that long for meaning, connection, and authenticity. Conclusion: reclaiming sincerity in a post-ironic age. So, where do we go from here? And how do we reclaim sincerity in a post-ironic age without all turning into preachy Hallmark card versions of ourselves? Well, we start by acknowledging the problem. Irony is fun, but it's also a crutch. And I get that these days it's easier to laugh off real emotion than to feel it, but in the long run it leaves us emptier and more disconnected. The trick, as Jung might say, is to own your shadow, to integrate it rather than let it fester inside you and run the show. Learn to embrace your cringe and your perceived inferiorities. Don't abandon irony, it has its place, but learn to recognize when it's masking something deeper that needs your attention. And most importantly, try to stop yourself from being scared of sincerity. I know it's hard. We all love to intoxicate ourselves with irony poison now and then, but let's not turn into devils. Thanks so much again for watching, and I hope this gave you plenty of food for thought. And thank you once again to everybody who has liked and subscribed. This is a new channel and it's growing, and I'm really excited about that. And if you would like to help me on that journey, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. It helps me in the algorithm and I really appreciate it. If you would like to help support my work, I am actually currently teaching a course with a really cool museum in New York called Morbid Anatomy. In January, I'm going to be teaching a course on psychic self-defense for the digital age. So if you're interested in details about that and you want to pre-book ahead, there's a link in the description. I also have a Patreon where I'm currently hosting a book club and we're tackling Carl Jung's Ion together. So if you would like access to my book club as well as a plethora of other rewards, check the description below and join me on Patreon. And if you would like to hear from me weekly, I also have a podcast called Mystic in the Machine, where I discuss the zeitgeist from a depth psychology perspective. All links are in the description, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in another 2 weeks with a new deep dive.